In this podcast episode, former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott shares his insights on the current geopolitical landscape, emphasizing the need for the West to reassess its approach to military, economic, and cultural challenges. Abbott expresses concern that the West is engaging in a process of unilateral disarmament, which he believes must come to an end. He warns that the world is in a more dangerous state than at any time in his life, citing the aggressive actions of leaders like Vladimir Putin, the Iranian regime, and the Chinese Communist Party. Abbott articulates his belief that Putin's aggression in Ukraine is largely succeeding, as the West allows his nuclear threats to dictate the level of support provided to Ukraine. He points out that the Iranian regime is also close to acquiring nuclear weapons, which poses a significant threat to global stability, particularly regarding Israel. Abbott emphasizes that the West must wake up to the reality of these threats and take decisive action to counter them. He expresses optimism about the resurgence of Donald Trump, viewing it as a potential turning point against the politics of climate identity that he believes has caused significant damage. Abbott notes that Trump's return to the political stage could signal a shift in attitudes toward national strength and self-belief among Western democracies. Abbott discusses the importance of unity among Western democracies in the face of rising authoritarianism. He highlights the need for a strong democratic alliance to deter aggression from countries like China and Russia. He argues that any military action against Taiwan would not only involve the island nation, but would also pit China against a formidable coalition of democratic powers. Abbott stresses that the West must demonstrate its resolve and commitment to defending democratic values. He acknowledges the challenges posed by the current political climate, particularly in Europe, where there is a tendency for nations to rely on American military strength. Abbott argues that European countries must step up and take responsibility for their own defense, rather than free riding on American resources. The conversation then shifts to the implications of nuclear weapons in international relations. Abbott notes that while the world has managed to coexist with nuclear weapons since 1945, the real danger lies in the hands of irrational leaders who may not hesitate to use them. He expresses particular concern about the Iranian regime acquiring nuclear capabilities, as their ideology could lead to catastrophic consequences. Abbott criticizes the West's response to Putin's nuclear threats, suggesting that the West is too easily intimidated. He argues that a more robust stance is necessary to prevent further aggression and to uphold the principle that bullies should not win. Abbott also addresses the economic implications of the West's current trajectory, particularly in relation to energy policy. He laments the trend of deindustrialization in countries like Australia and the UK, driven by an obsession with achieving net zero emissions. He argues that this approach leads to economic stagnation and a loss of jobs, particularly in traditional industries like coal and gas. He emphasizes the need for a return to economic vigor and military strength, warning that the current policies are detrimental to the prosperity of ordinary citizens. Abbott points out that the push for renewable energy often results in higher energy prices and a lack of reliable power sources, which ultimately harms the most vulnerable in society. The discussion also touches on immigration policies, with Abbott expressing concern over the rapid influx of immigrants into Australia. He argues that the current immigration levels are unsustainable and create significant pressure on housing and infrastructure. Abbott calls for a more measured approach to immigration, one that prioritizes the needs and interests of the existing population. He acknowledges the historical context of immigration as a source of economic and social good, but stresses the importance of balancing this with the realities of infrastructure and social cohesion. Abbott argues that political leaders must address these issues honestly and not shy away from difficult conversations. As the conversation draws to a close, Abbott reflects on the need for strong leadership in Western democracies. He notes that successful leaders must be willing to confront uncomfortable truths and take decisive action to address the challenges facing their nations. He expresses hope that the current political climate could lead to a resurgence of common sense and a rejection of the extremes that have characterized recent years. Abbott concludes by reiterating the importance of military strength and economic resilience as foundations for a stable and prosperous future. He emphasizes that the West must prepare for potential conflicts while upholding its values and ideals, ensuring that the principles of democracy and freedom are defended against authoritarian threats.